26 entries, 5 tiers. From the FBI running a CP site for days, to a site terrorists use to post real-life executions, these are some of the most disturbing websites on the internet. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Tier 1. PLAYPEN. PLAYPEN was one of the darkest corners of the darknet, and that's saying something. Launched in August 2014, it operated on the Tor network, where anonymity is the default, and morality often goes to die. The site's creator was Stephen W. Chase, a 58-year-old from Florida who made it his mission to build a digital playground for predators. In just 6 months, PLAYPEN exploded. By the time authorities caught up, it had over 215,000 registered users and hosted more than 23,000 images and videos of child mistreatment, some involving toddlers. Users didn't just lurk, they posted, commented, encouraged each other, and shared content. Every upload meant more abuse, and the community kept growing. The only reason the site got busted was because Chase slipped up. Despite all the layers of encryption and anonymity Tor is known for, he accidentally exposed his IP address. That gave the FBI just enough to track him down and seize the site's servers. But that's where the story gets even darker. Instead of immediately shutting PLAYPEN down, the FBI made the controversial call to keep it running for exactly 13 more days. Under Operation Pacifier, they took over the site, kept all the material live, and reportedly even improved its performance. Yes, the FBI made a site hosting child exploitation material load faster, but they say it was for a good cause. I'll leave that to you to decide. During those 13 days, the Bureau used a piece of malware called a network investigative technique to identify users. It bypassed Tor's anonymity, infected their systems, and logged their real IP addresses. That sting operation led to more than 900 arrests across the globe. Chase got 30 years in prison. His 2 top admins got 20 each, but the fallout didn't end there. Critics, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, blasted the operation for essentially distributing CP to catch people looking at CP. The warrant that allowed the malware was supposed to cover suspects in Virginia, but it ended up infecting users worldwide. In one case, the FBI even dropped charges because revealing how the malware worked would have compromised their methods. What started as a victory against one of the internet's worst websites turned into a legal and ethical minefield. Operation Pacifier forced the world to ask a really deep question. If you fight monsters by becoming one, did you really win? SILKROAD. Before the darknet became a household boogeyman, SILKROAD had already built itself into a full-blown black market empire. Launched in 2011 by Ross Ulbricht, better known online as Dread Pirate Roberts, the site lived on the Tor network, where identities were hidden and Bitcoin was king. On the surface, it looked like a simple forum complete with product listings, vendor ratings, and user reviews. But underneath, it was basically the Amazon of illegal drugs. Within months, you could buy anything from LSD and heroin to Adderall and synthetic cannabinoids. There were forged IDs, fake passports, and even pirated erotica for sale. Everything came with customer service. Users left reviews like they were on Yelp, and even posted shipping photos and commentary like, fast delivery, clean high, would trip again. SILKROAD didn't allow weapons or CP, but let's be real, that wasn't about morals. The site ran on the belief that people should be free to consume whatever they wanted. Laws be damned. That libertarian dream quickly turned into a calculated business. Ulbricht, despite his idealist branding, took more and more control as things grew. He started obsessing over uptime, order flow, and user trust to the point that the site started using automated escrow to hold payments until delivery was confirmed. At its peak in 2013, SILKROAD had facilitated over $1.2 billion in transactions. It had its own economy, its own rules, and a massive target on its back. When the FBI finally caught up to Ulbricht, they arrested him in a San Francisco library while his laptop was still open. We're talking SILKROAD admin panel loaded, messages in progress, transaction files, chat logs, and his plans to allegedly have several people killed open. None of those murder-for-hire plots went through, but prosecutors ran with it anyway because it showed how deep the rabbit hole went. The site was shut down later that year. Ulbricht was sentenced to 2 life terms without parole, and over 170,000 bitcoins were seized. It was worth millions back then, and billions now. SILKROAD 2.0 popped up shortly after, but it didn't last. Others came and went, but none matched the original's legacy. SILKROAD wasn't just a marketplace. It was proof that the internet could, and eventually would, sell you absolutely anything. Also, believe it or not, there's a site deeper down this iceberg that claimed you could grow a kitten in a jar. and some people actually believed it. Shocking, I know. In fact, it's almost as bad as what's coming next. Rotten.com. At first glance, Rotten.com looked boring. Just a plain white background, blue links, no images, and no flashy graphics. It kind of looked like someone's high school project that got left behind in the 90s. But that bland front page was a trap, because behind it was one of the darkest rabbit holes the internet ever coughed up. Launched in 1996, back when the internet was still the digital Wild West and content moderation was a myth, Rotten.com became the unofficial museum of the grotesque. If it was violent, disturbing, or straight up nightmare material, it probably lived on Rotten. Dead bodies? Check. Crime scene photos? Check. Autopsies, car crashes, suicides, decapitations? All of the above. Oh, and there were no trigger warnings and no context. Just click and cry or violently throw up. And the worst part is you never know what you were about to see. You'd click a link called something vague like accident, and 3 seconds later you'd be face to face with a photo of a bloated corpse pulled from a river, or what's left of someone's skull after a high-speed motorcycle crash, or maybe a shotgun blast. No one really checked. Some of the photos were real, pulled from morgues, forensic files, or sent in by users who thought emailing graphic images to a stranger was normal behavior. Others were completely mislabeled or fake, but that didn't really matter. Accuracy wasn't the point. Shock value was. If the site could trick you into clicking something that made you physically recoil, that was a win. Even royalty wasn't off limits. A grainy image claiming to show Princess Diana's corpse was uploaded despite being proven fake, because Rotten knew people would still click. It didn't matter if it was true or not, because as the saying goes, curiosity always wins. But nothing crossed the line quite like what happened after 9/11. While most of the world was mourning, Rotten uploaded photos of people falling from the Twin Towers and titled the section Swan Dive. That wasn't just tasteless, it was intentionally cruel. Of course, there were also videos on the website, and somehow those were a lot worse. Pulled from cell phones, CCTV, medical footage, and the far corners of early internet forums. You can find everything from people being burned alive to full-on autopsies. Real ones. You might watch a body get dissected before your brain even processes what's happening. Naturally, families were furious. Lawsuits rolled in, takedown requests, threats, investigations, you name it, all came pouring down on the site. But Rotten didn't budge. For years, it held the line and was well on the way to becoming one of the most hated websites online. Eventually, though, the internet evolved. Social media took over, laws got tighter, and the culture shifted. Rotten quietly disappeared sometime in the 2010s with no announcement or apology. It was just gone. But the damage was already done. By the time it vanished, Rotten had inspired an entire genre of shock sites and introduced an entire generation to the idea that the internet could show you things you really weren't supposed to see. This was bad, but there's another site coming that didn't just show pictures, it showed everything. LiveLeak. LiveLeak launched in 2006, and it was built by the same people behind Ogrish.com, an uncensored site known for posting graphic photos and videos of just about every kind of violence imaginable. We'll get to that in Tier 4. For now, just know that LiveLeak was their attempt to clean things up a little. The idea was to make it feel more like raw journalism or citizen reporting, like a place where the real unfiltered world could be seen without media spin. But let's be real, most people remember LiveLeak for one thing: death on camera. While platforms like YouTube were tightening the rules and scrubbing away anything graphic, LiveLeak became one of the last stops for the stuff that got banned everywhere else. Executions, Warzone clips, street fights, car crashes, that type of stuff. If it was intense and disturbing, it would probably be on LiveLeak. One of the first videos that blew the site up was Saddam Hussein's execution. It was shaky, grainy phone footage of him on the gallows, hearing his sentence, and then dropping through the floor. Mainstream news wouldn't touch it, but on LiveLeak, it was front and center. Years later, when ISIS began uploading those infamous beheading videos, most of the internet panicked, and rightly so. YouTube and Facebook took them down almost instantly. LiveLeak, on the other hand, briefly allowed them. Eventually, they started trimming the actual executions, but still posted the aftermath. In one video, you could see the corpse of journalist James Foley laid out in the desert after he had been killed. Then, in 2021, it was suddenly gone with no tangible explanation. If you tried visiting the site, it quietly redirected you to a new platform called ItemFix that specifically banned extreme violence. Instead of the gore you came for, you would find clips of weird stunts, fails, and odd news stories. But the people who watched? Yeah, they remember. And yeah, researching stuff like this isn't exactly risk-free. That's why this video is sponsored by Private Internet Access, or PIA VPN. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet, so your data stays private even on sketchy networks. PIA hides your IP, encrypts your traffic, and keeps your activity private, even when you're neck deep in forgotten image boards or clicking on archived links that shouldn't still work. Streaming without PIA is like subscribing to every magazine on Earth, but only getting the one they print in your zip code. Snowden, the movie that made your friend install Linux, isn't available on Netflix US, but it is if you switch your location to Canada. PIA makes that happen, ironically by making your connection invisible. Netflix, Disney Plus, and other platforms technically have thousands of shows and movies, but thanks to licensing laws, you're stuck with whatever your region got in the divorce. PIA lets you unlock full libraries from other countries, so your subscription finally works like it was supposed to. No more being geo-blocked from the good stuff. I've been using it while researching this script because some of these sites you do not want tied to your real identity. PIA runs quietly in the background, so I'm not handing over my IP to whoever's watching from the other side. It works on all major platforms, covers unlimited devices, and has a strict no-logs policy that's been independently verified. Over 30 million people already use it to browse privately. And if you want to join them, just use the link, piavpn.com/quackdoc in the description or pinned comment. Right now, you'll get 83% off plus 4 extra months free. That's just $2.03 a month, and it's totally risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're going to dive into the disturbing side of the internet, at least do it privately. Get PIA. The SCP Foundation. SCP Wiki. The SCP Wiki website is, for all intents and purposes, the internet's creepiest filing cabinet. It's filled with thousands of stories about a fictional organization called the SCP Foundation. And their job is pretty straightforward. Find the weird stuff, lock it up, and never ever let the public find out it exists. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, which is both the group's motto and their main strategy. The Foundation tracks down things that defy science or reality, like haunted objects, immortal creatures, glitchy space-time pockets, and shoves them into secret bunkers where, hopefully, they don't kill anyone. Emphasis on hopefully. They operate totally off the grid, but be rest assured that if something supernatural or dangerous pops up, they will be waiting to send in heavily armed squads called mobile task forces who are like paranormal SWAT teams. Either the weird thing gets captured and stored, or the whole event gets wiped from the public's memory. It's like Men in Black, if Men in Black had a much higher body count. And speaking of body count, the Foundation isn't exactly ethical. They use disposable human test subjects called D-class personnel, who are usually death row inmates or people the world won't miss. These people get tossed into experiments with things like man-eating shadows or cursed elevators, and they rarely make it out alive. It's all done in the name of protecting humanity. But yeah, it's messed up. Some of the SCPs are straight out of nightmares, like SCP-087, which is a stairwell that goes down forever and might have a ghost face lurking in it. Or SCP-096, a pale humanoid that becomes unstoppable and homicidal the second anyone sees its face, even in a photo. But the fan favorite was SCP-173, a creepy statue that doesn't move unless you blink. Blink once and it snaps your neck. If that sounds like the weeping angels from Doctor Who, you're not alone. All the stories are written in this cold, clinical tone, like official government reports, complete with redacted info and warning labels. That's what makes it so spooky. It feels real. The deeper you go into the wiki, the more it starts to feel like you're not reading fiction anymore. Instead, you're reading leaked files from some sketchy organization that keeps the universe from unraveling, but at a pretty steep cost. So yeah, the SCP Foundation isn't just about monsters and anomalies. It's also a look at what happens when people think the ends justify the means and how terrifying that can be. CREEPYPASTA.com. CREEPYPASTA.com looks harmless at first. Just a bunch of user-submitted horror stories, right? But dig a little deeper and it becomes clear that this site didn't just help build modern internet horror, it helped shape it. Some stories were short and spooky. Others stretch into entire universes with haunted video games, cursed cartoons, and rituals that make you wonder if trying them, just for fun, was a really good idea. And then there was Slender Man. Tall, faceless, and weirdly stylish in a suit. He became one of the site's biggest legends. The problem was that somewhere along the line, some people forgot it was all made up. In 2014, two 12-year-old girls stabbed their friend, saying they did it for Slender Man. They wanted to impress him because they thought he was real. That incident turned the site into headline news. Moderators quickly put out statements reminding everyone that the stories were fictional. But by then, the damage was done. Fiction had leaked into the real world, and not in a fun ghost story around the campfire kind of way. The most disturbing part is how realistic the stories often felt. They'd throw in real towns, news reports, or just enough boring detail to make you second guess whether it really was just fiction. The line between what's made up and what might be possible started to blur, on purpose. It didn't help that some of the most popular themes were pretty dark. Lost TV episodes that end in suicide, cursed websites that drive people insane, or video games that killed the player in real life. It was like childhood nostalgia and existential dread got mashed into one creepy internet casserole. Sure, most people read the stories and moved on, but when a kid stabs her friend because she thinks a tall, faceless, imaginary man told her to do it, yeah, that's when things really start to get out of hand. Tier 2. The Pirate Bay. Back in 2003, a group of Swedes with way too much time and zero fear of lawsuits launched something called the Pirate Bay. And despite sounding like a Disneyland ride for daredevil teens, it was actually a digital treasure map that pointed you towards all kinds of illegal goodies. Instead of gold coins, you got pirated movies, cracked software, obscure albums, and enough corn to fry a hard drive. The site didn't actually host any of the files. It just handed you magnet links, which worked like digital breadcrumbs leading you to the stuff you wanted, or in many cases, really didn't want. With one click, you could download an entire season of Friends, or accidentally infect your computer with malware so bad, it starts sending spam emails in Russian. It was that kind of place. And the deeper you went, the darker it got. Hidden in folders labeled anime or HD videos were videos so graphic that they'd get banned from even the sketchiest mainstream corn sites. Revenge.com? Check. Deepfake celebrity stuff? Check. Home videos that clearly weren't meant to be public? Also available. The Pirate Bay knew it was sketchy, and honestly, kinda leaned into it. They'd slap lawsuit threats right on the homepage like trophies next to provocative imagery mocking Hollywood and the MPAA. The site was pretty much a digital middle finger to copyright law, run by people who were clearly having way too much fun. Naturally, the cops weren't amused. There were raids, server seizures, and even prison sentences. In 2009, the founders got jail time, but every time the Pirate Bay got shut down, it popped up somewhere else. You couldn't kill it. The wildest part is that anyone could upload torrents. So while some folk were just sharing bootleg DVDs, others were sneaking in straight-up snuff films disguised as cat videos or sharing hacked surveillance footage like it was a regular Tuesday. 4chan.org. At first glance, 4chan looks like a messy old forum from the early 2000s that somehow never died. It's anonymous, chaotic, and kind of ugly, which is exactly how its users like it. Originally launched by a 15-year-old anime fan from New York, the site started out as a place to share Japanese cartoons. That's it, just anime pictures, nothing too deep. But then came B, the random board that had no topic and no rules, just pure digital anarchy. B became the heart of 4chan's culture, if you can even call it that. Here, users posted whatever they wanted, without usernames, filters, or moderation. And when you let people be anonymous in a space where there are no consequences, things go downhill fast. Pretty soon, 4chan wasn't just about anime. It was the birthplace of memes like Rickrolling, lolcats, and even Anonymous, a group of hackers and netizens known for protesting against censorship and corruption. But behind the goofy memes and pranks were something darker. Users pushed boundaries not for fun, but to see what they could get away with. The shock factor became the whole point. So things like graphic adult films, gore, racism, and animal abuse, B had it all. The line between edgy humor and actual sociopathy wasn't just blurred, it was erased. The culture became proudly heartless, and doxing people was practically a sport. Victims were laughed at, and empathy was treated like weakness. And then came POL, which was short for politically incorrect. If B was chaotic evil, POL was calculated. This board turned into a magnet for white supremacists, conspiracy theorists, and extremists who hid their hate behind layers of irony and memes. They'd post Nazi propaganda, dehumanizing jokes, and violent fantasies, then hide behind irony. But the damage was real. Mass murderers were memed into celebrity status, and the line between trolling and radicalizing was pretty much destroyed. Sure, 4chan occasionally scrubs illegal content, but for the most part, the only rule is don't get caught. It's barely moderated by conventional standards. What started as a place for anime fans somehow devolved into a case study on what happens when the internet grows without a conscience. But if you think 4chan's bad, you should know that this iceberg will get much worse. There's a site coming that didn't just post people, they ruined lives for fun. But first, let's talk about 4chan's evil sibling, 8chan, or 8kun. 8chan started off as a messy little rebellion project, a place where anyone could create their own message board with basically no rules. It pitched itself as a free speech alternative to 4chan, but what that really meant was zero moderation and zero accountability. Predictably, the worst parts of the internet saw it as an open invitation. It didn't take long for to hit the fan. Boards dedicated to hate speech, violent extremism, and predatory content became some of its busiest hubs. People banned from everywhere else like Reddit, Twitter, and even 4chan dragged their filth over the 8chan. And while the site claimed it didn't allow illegal content, the enforcement was a joke. Some boards openly discussed minors inappropriately, and others shared links to child mistreatment material that was hosted elsewhere. In 2015, even Google blacklisted the entire site for suspected child exploitation. And then came the violence. During Gamergate, a campaign that began over gaming journalism but later turned into targeted harassment, 8chan became the new headquarters for coordinated attacks after 4chan tried to shut things down. But it didn't stop there. In 2019 alone, 3 separate mass shooters used 8chan to post manifestos before carrying out their attacks. Before killing 51 people in Christchurch, New Zealand, the shooter, Brenton Harris Tarrant, uploaded a manifesto to 8chan. The Poway synagogue shooter did the same. And hours before the El Paso massacre, a document filled with racist hate and justification for violence appeared on the site. Each time, users rallied behind the perpetrators, celebrating them and encouraging others to follow their example. After El Paso, the backlash finally hit. Infrastructure companies like Cloudflare dropped them. Web hosts bailed, and the site was basically forced offline. But as always, it came back. In late 2019, it rebranded as 8kun and quietly slipped back online with help from Russian hosts known for handling cybercrime. It limped along from server to server, never fully stable, but just alive enough to keep its most loyal users going, especially the QAnon crowd, who had basically turned 8chan into their church. QAnon is a conspiracy cult that believes a secret group of satanic, cannibalistic elites controls the world, and that an anonymous figure known as Q is leaking cryptic clues to expose and defeat them. They believe a bunch of other questionable stuff, but that's the meat of the matter. At its core, 8chan, and now 8kun, become proof that free speech can be twisted into a cover for radicalization, kid exploitation, and glorified violence. WIKIFEET. At first glance, WIKIFEET looks almost wholesome. It's got a simple layout, nothing flashy, and it doesn't scream disturbing internet hole the way other sites on this list do. It's also pretty straightforward. You type in a celebrity's name, and boom, rows of clean, well-lit photos of their feet pop up. Red carpet strappy heels, barefoot beach walks, blurry screenshots from interviews where someone's shoes were off for half a second. That's it. Totally normal, right? Then you scroll a little further and you notice there's a rating system, a 5-star scale. Users upvoting and downvoting toes like it's Yelp for ankles. People leave detailed comments not about the outfits or achievements, but about arch structure, heel smoothness, and toe symmetry. There are actual arguments in the forums about which celebrity has the most overrated pinky toe. You'll see terms like foot tier list, instep envy, and bunion truthers. It stops being quirky fast. And then it gets worse because it's not just actresses and models. Female politicians, news anchors, and public figures probably didn't expect to have their feet logged, analyzed, and archived by strangers also show up on the site. But since the photos are technically public, obtained from paparazzi shots, red carpet stills, and social media posts, the site doesn't need permission. It just scrapes everything and builds what usually ends up being a surprisingly detailed catalog. And sometimes, that catalog actually helps solve real-world mysteries. In 2019, someone tried to leak a blurry bathtub foot photo claiming it was U.S. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but WIKIFEET users weren't convinced. They broke out the zoom tools, compared toe length, bone angles, and foot veins to verified photos in the archive, and reached a verdict. It wasn't her. But they didn't just stop at debunking the claim, they correctly identified the foot as belonging to Sydney Leathers. Yes, really. That's when it stopped being a weird foot gallery and became something more unsettling. A forensic, crowdsourced, toe-obsessed task force. Behind it all is Eli Ozer, a former animator who now runs WIKIFEET full-time. He says the site gets over 3 million views a month. There's also a sister site, WIKIFEET X, for adult film stars. For a few years, copyright laws in the EU blocked access to high-res images, but that barely slowed it down. The archive just kept growing, fed by a silent army of foot connoisseurs who are, for some reason, determined to catalog the internet one soul at a time. And the creepiest part is, it's all still perfectly legal. And as disturbing as it sounds, feet are just the start. There's a site coming where people are into way weirder stuff, like cartoon wolves doing adult stuff. Before that, let's talk a little about a site people use to ruin others' lives. It's pretty sad. KIWIFARMS. On the surface, KIWIFARMS looks like just another internet forum complete with outdated layout, inside jokes, and a lot of weird usernames. But that's just the skin. Underneath, it's one of the darkest rabbit holes the web has to offer. What started as a niche space to mock one person turned into a forum where organized harassment is, well, the whole point. The site was founded by Joshua Connor Moon, a former 8chan mod, and it didn't take long for things to escalate. KiwiFarms users pride themselves on hunting down what they call lol cows. And by that, they mean people they believe are so cringeworthy or mentally ill that they deserve endless public humiliation. These targets are often trans folks, neurodivergent people, people with mental health struggles, or just anyone a little too online for KiwiFarms' taste. And this isn't just name-calling in a thread. It's a full-time hobby for some of them. Threads stretch on for hundreds of pages with screenshots, mock diagnoses, edited photos, and wild conspiracy-level speculation. But then it leaves the screen, and that's when things really start to get dangerous. Users dig up real names, addresses, and family members of their victims. They call in fake reports to the cops. They call that swatting. Or sending pizza deliveries using trans victims' dead names just to stir the pot. Some of them call employers, and others send threats. The site is basically a tutorial in digital stalking. And the game never ends, because victims can't just log off. One of the most disturbing examples was Clara Sorrenti, a transgender activist who was doxxed and swatted by KiwiFarms users. After she fled her home and checked into a hotel, she made the mistake of posting a photo of her cat on the bed. That's all it took. From the bed sheets, users figured out where she was staying. Then they sent pizzas under her dead name to prove they were still watching. It sounds like a horror movie, but it's real, and it doesn't always end with pizza. Several of the forum's targets have taken their own lives after years of harassment. In 2016, Julie Terryberry died by suicide following a KiwiFarms harassment campaign. In 2018, Chloe Segal set herself on fire in public. In 2021, Near, a well-known developer in the retro gaming community, posted a final message blaming KiwiFarms for turning years of bullying into something they couldn't survive. The site's users often justify this by calling it free speech or archiving. But that's like calling a hit list a diary. Tier 3, E621.net. When you first log in, E621 might look like just another image board, but give it 10 seconds, and you'll realize you've wandered into one of the internet's most infamous hubs for furry corn that's graphic, hyper-specific, and aggressively niche. Launched in 2007, E621 functions like a massive digital art gallery, where users upload illustrations and tag them with disturbing accuracy. Tags range from the species of the character to the exact act being shown. And while there is technically some safe-for-work content, that's not why anyone's here. The bulk of its nearly 4 million posts is explicit, like very explicit, and dives headfirst into every fetish imaginable, often involving anthropomorphic animals, monsters, and characters from shows originally meant for kids. You'll find graphic art of Pokemon, Sonic, or My Little Pony characters in X-rated situations and positions that'll ruin all your favorite childhood memories in seconds. Within the furry fandom, this kind of content is called YIF. But what makes E621 controversial isn't just the cartoon critters, it's how far the content goes. Some images involve violent or non-consensual themes. Others explore body horror, transformation fetishes, or things that look an awful lot like bestiality but get a pass because the characters are fictional. The site's tagging system is both disturbingly detailed and incredibly efficient, because it lets users filter for just about anything, from bodily fluids to acts that probably shouldn't be searchable. While E621 claims to prohibit illegal content, the abstract nature of most of its art makes enforcement fuzzy at best. Combine that with a sheer volume of submissions, and moderation becomes more like a suggestion than a system. The site is owned by Jan Varka Mulders, who also runs Bad Dragon, a company that makes fantasy-themed adult toys modeled after animals and mythical creatures, many of which are inspired directly by art from E621. So yeah, there's a feedback loop between what gets drawn online and what ends up being sold in silicone. Fantasy meets fetish, and both sides profit. More recently, E621 has run into real-world trouble. In early 2024, it blocked access in North Carolina after the state passed an age verification law for adult sites. Arizona followed in May 2025 with a similar bill, threatening the site's home base. It's now facing a choice: comply, shut down, or vanish. But even if the domain disappears, E621 isn't going anywhere. Its content has already been downloaded, mirrored, and etched into the stranger corners of the internet. Drawings are one thing, but it doesn't stop there. In the next year, we have a site where people took things way further with their own bodies. Encyclopedia Dramatica. Encyclopedia Dramatica was like if Wikipedia snorted bath salts and decided empathy was for losers. It launched in 2004 as a place to document live journal drama. Yes, live journal. But it quickly evolved into a no-holds-barred cesspool of internet cruelty, where nothing was off limits and everything was fair game, especially if it made someone miserable. Styled like a wiki but written like a middle school burn book possessed by a demon, the site specialized in mockery, doxing, and absolute chaos. It didn't matter if you were a public figure or just some random person who got caught saying something cringe on the internet. If you made waves, even small ones, you could wake up to an article trashing your name, plastered with your photos, your address, and probably something photoshopped involving a goat. The site thrived on cruelty for entertainment. Mocking disabled people? It was hilarious to them. Glorifying school shooters? That was their jam. And uploading real footage of people self-killing? That was considered top-tier content. The more disturbing it was, the more it was celebrated. Articles were crammed with offensive slurs, shock horn, gore, and enough hate speech to make even 4chan blink. And if the words didn't sting enough, contributors coordinated attacks offline too, by sending hookers, threats, or unwanted pizza to people's homes. At its peak, ED became a hub for trolls and wannabe edgelords, especially those coming from B, 4chan's infamous Anything Goes board. They'd plan raids together, targeting websites, online communities, or individuals just to stir chaos. The only requirement for being a target was existing. Even the site's founder, Shara DeGrippo, eventually tapped out. She shut it down, saying it had spiraled into something she couldn't or didn't want to control anymore. She also mentioned pressure from law enforcement, which probably kicked things into gear. But like most things on the internet, ED refused to die. Mirrors popped up, and clones kept it alive. In the end, Encyclopedia Dramatica was never really about documenting drama. It was about being the drama. BestGore.com. BestGore.com was not for the faint-hearted, so some of the site's contents came with disclaimers, but they didn't offer much context. From the second you landed on the homepage, the site basically screamed, "If you're squeamish, turn around." If for any reason you chose not to pay attention to the disclaimers and decided to stick around, you would immediately come face to face with brutal content that looked like it had been ripped straight out of a horror movie. Only worse, because most of it was real. Launched in 2008, Best Gore had one job: to show you the worst humanity had to offer. Car crashes, cartel executions, suicides, war zone footage, surgical procedures with zero anesthesia, you name it. If it was graphic and gory, it was on there. And usually with some edgy title and commentary that sounded less like a news report and more like someone daring you to keep scrolling. The guy behind it, Mark Merrick, claimed he had a noble goal. He said the gore was supposed to teach people lessons. Things like don't speed, don't mess with drugs, don't romanticize war, and definitely don't take life for granted. In his mind, this was tough love activism. But let's be honest, people didn't visit Best Gore to learn life lessons. They came for the horror. And then, in 2012, the site crossed a line even other shock sites didn't dare to touch. That year, Best Gore posted a video called "One Lunatic, One Ice Pick." And it was exactly what it sounded like. A real murder caught on camera. Luca Magnotta tortured and killed a man named Jun Lin, cut up his body, and filmed the whole thing. Then someone uploaded it to Best Gore. And for a while it stayed up. Merrick didn't immediately remove it. He said it was educational. As you'd expect, the internet and law enforcement didn't agree. The video went viral in the worst way possible. Police opened an investigation, and Merrick was eventually arrested in Canada for corrupting morals under an obscenity law that almost never gets used. He said the video was taken down before the cops even asked, but it didn't matter. That one post dragged Best Gore from the shadows and put it on international headlines. But here's the thing, that wasn't a one-time mistake. Best Gore had always walked a thin line between showing reality and just feeding a morbid audience. Some users really believed it opened their eyes. Others were there for the adrenaline rush that comes with watching something you know you shouldn't. Merrick insisted he was doing the world a favor. He said the site exposed media manipulation and government lies in addition to teaching life lessons. To support this claim, he'd post raw war footage that challenged propaganda or debunked fake viral videos. And maybe he had a point sometimes. But that didn't change the fact that most of the site's appeal came from how much it hurt to look at just about anything on there. Eventually, in 2020, Best Gore vanished. Again, there was no dramatic exit or apology. It was just gone. This place was chaotic, yeah, but there's a site coming that no one can explain. We're not even sure if it was real. Gorgrish.com. Gorgrish.com isn't the kind of site you accidentally stumble on. If you're there, you're meant to be there, or at least you made a conscious decision to go looking for it. It started back in 2008 under the name pornographic.net. Yeah, real classy, I know, but rebranded a couple years later into something more blunt, Gorgrish. By 2010, it had found its place as the next stop on the shock content timeline. It basically picked up where older forums like Ogrish and Uncover Reality left off. But while those sites either cleaned up or disappeared altogether, Gorgrish didn't budge. It doubled down. The site is basically a giant archive of, you guessed it, human suffering. It was carefully categorized like a library, but for death, mutilation, and every horrible thing you can think of. The homepage is filled with forums and threads where users casually browse and comment on videos of self-unaliving, car wrecks, torture, beheadings, war crimes, and yes, sometimes even necrophilia. You heard that right. Needless to say, you'll find some of the most infamous shock clips in internet history on there. Luke Magnotta's murder video? Check. Cartel hits? Prison stabbings? Soldiers being executed on camera? Yep, it's all in rotation, with comment section to match. One of the lowest points came when the site posted autopsy photos of a 3-year-old named Ngati Kaura Ngati. The images caused immediate outrage, especially from child protection groupers who couldn't believe someone thought it was okay to upload that kind of thing. But on Gorgrish, everything is content. What really makes the site stand out or stand apart is the tone. It's not just the videos, it's the way people talk about them. The community runs like any other message board. There are regulars, inside jokes, and post counts. Only instead of chatting about football or movies, they're rating decapitations and swapping self-killing methods. It's surreal. Like most of the other sites that hosted extremely graphic content, the creators of Gorgrish.com have spent years defending it, claiming they just want to show people the reality the world ignores. And maybe that's true, but it still doesn't explain the weirdly casual fascination. Sure, there were disclaimers, but there was no real attempt to educate or inform people. It was just raw, relentless, and honestly, that seems to be the entire point. Over the years, Gorgrish has taken hits from hackers, takedown complaints, and has even gotten delisted from Google in places like Germany. In 2023, it went offline for weeks, supposedly from another round of attacks. But like the horror movie villain it kind of is, the site always comes back. And maybe the most disturbing thing isn't what's on Gorgrish. It's how many people keep showing up to watch. Mortis.com. Mortis.com loads to a plain black screen with just one word in white text. Mortis. Click anywhere and a single login box appears with no images and no links. The site has been live since 1997. It didn't crash, didn't change much, and was active for years before going offline. People have poked at it for years, including hackers, cryptographers, and conspiracy theorists. They've all tried to get past the login screen, and none of them have succeeded. Naturally, the silence has birthed some pretty wild theories. Because if there's one thing people love to do, it's come up with imaginary explanations for things they don't understand. Some believe it's a CIA or NSA dead drop, a place for agents to access highly classified content through a remote and untraceable portal. Others think it's part of an elite hacker network, or worse, a gateway to some older occult knowledge or esoteric systems buried in modern code. And then there are those who see it as a ghost, not in the supernatural sense, but as a forgotten relic from an internet that's long since moved on. What really haunts people, though, is the feeling that someone was maintaining it for quite some time. The site went down sometimes, but it always came back. Its SSL certificates got renewed, and on top of that, some people claimed that there were subtle tweaks in the background that you'd miss if you weren't watching closely. Why would someone keep something like this running for so long without ever saying a word? To this day, there's no definitive proof about what Mortis.com actually was. You can read theories and dig through forums for as long as you'd like, but you'll find nothing certain. INCEL.IS. At first glance, INCEL.IS looks like a support forum. If you don't look closely enough, you might even mistake it for just another online space where lonely people gather to talk about rejection, frustration, and isolation. The word incel, after all, originally stood for involuntarily celibate, and the early communities for them were more sad than scary. People then were looking for advice, empathy, or even just someone to listen. But Incel.is isn't that. It's not even close. Founded in 2017 by members of the Reddit Incels community after the original Reddit Incel subreddit got banned for inciting violence, this site quickly turned into one of the darkest corners of the internet. So what's it about? Healing? Definitely not. Growth? You wish. The whole website runs on resentment and blame, and its purpose is to convince thousands of men that the world is broken because women have the audacity to say no. The forum openly bans women and LGBTQ users, and calls itself a safe space for straight men, which in this case just means a place where no one interrupts the hate speech. The central belief here is that the modern world is a rigged marketplace, where women only want chads, aka the genetically blessed, socially dominant men, and everyone else is doomed. Not unlucky, not struggling, doomed. And the posts reflect that. Some talk about self-unaliving with disturbing regularity. Others share graphic details of their violent fantasies, express their misogyny, and engage in idol worship of real-life mass murderers like Elliot Rodger and Alec Manassian. What's even more disturbing is how performative the hatred becomes. It's not enough to be miserable. You have to be the most miserable, the most hopeless, and of course, the most violently bitter. Threads sometimes turn into competitions to see who can describe their hatred of women or fantasies of revenge in the most disturbing way. And it doesn't stop at words. Some users share real experiences and stories of stalking women, watching them from their windows, and even dreams about forcing them into submission. Others flood the forum with memes that make jokes out of violation, child mistreatment, and domestic violence. And of course, no one stops it. In fact, the moderators seem to encourage this spiral. Over the years, the site has been booted from several domains for hate speech, only to pop up again somewhere else. In 2022, investigative reporters linked Incel.is to a network of self-killing forums, where users were actively being coached through self-harm. That overlap isn't exactly a coincidence, because on this site, death isn't feared. It's marketed, especially if it involves someone else dying too. Incel.is doesn't just let people vent. It radicalizes them. It's a pressure cooker, and the longer someone stays, the more likely they are to explode. If you think the anger here was bad, wait till we hit the site in the next tier, where hate was the whole point. Tier 4. Ogrish.com. Ogrish.com said it was an uncensored news platform, but let's be honest. It was more like digital carnage on demand. The site was all about raw violence. Executions, accidents, war zone footage, pretty much all the stomach-churning stuff known to mankind. Nothing was blurred. Nothing was softened, and the tone was completely numb. Like the site wasn't even pretending to care. Back in the early 2000s, this kind of thing stood out. While most websites still had some limits, Ogrish leaned all the way into shock. Its slogan literally asked, "Can you handle life?" and then hit you with videos most people probably couldn't handle at all. It didn't shy away from the dark stuff, and that's putting it lightly. When footage of people jumping from the Twin Towers on 9/11 started circulating, most sites avoided it. Ogrish didn't. It uploaded the videos and photos with zero warning, no permissions, and definitely no filter. Same thing happened in 2004 when Kim Sun-il, a South Korean man, was executed by militants. The video went up almost immediately, and so did the outrage. South Korean hackers tried to take the whole site down. Governments in Europe started pushing back. In Germany, authorities demanded that Ogrish verify its users' ages or face a ban. The site refused. And because a lot of Europe's internet traffic ran through Frankfurt at the time, when one provider blacklisted Ogrish, the block affected access across parts of Europe. Still, Ogrish came back at one point in 2006. They tried to rebrand. They swapped out the dark, edgy layout for something cleaner, added podcasts and forums, and introduced a section called Underground Media, which was what you could call a digital enter if you dare sign. It looked a little more polished, but nothing underneath really changed. The videos were still brutal. The commentary was still jaded, and people still came for the same reason, the shock. They even made an effort to clean up the forums a bit by cutting down on hate speech and banning trolls, but it didn't last. The site always snapped back to what it really was, a place for content so extreme no mainstream platform would touch it. Eventually, in late 2006, Ogrish shut down and started redirecting users to a new platform called LiveLeak. But by then, the damage was already done. BME. Before TikTok made extreme body modification something you could casually scroll past on your feed, there was BME Zine, which was pretty much the OG headquarters for people who were really into that type of stuff. Launched in 1994 by Shannon Larrett, it was the first site fully dedicated to body modification. And not the kind you show to your grandma. We're talking deep cuts, literally. BME didn't stop at tattoos and nose rings. This place dove headfirst into the deep end with things like subdermal implants, scarification, suspension, genital beading, voluntary amputations, and, yep, even people castrating themselves. Voluntarily, on camera, while smiling, or at least trying to. It was like a DIY horror show curated by people with terrifying pain tolerance and zero concern for conventional anatomy. The images and videos were unfiltered, uncensored, and unapologetically graphic. All you had to do was click one link and boom, someone's peeling off their own skin or hanging from hooks in a blood-slicked bathroom. The worst part wasn't even the gore. It was realizing that it was all real. Not props, not makeup. Just regular folks doing irreversible things to themselves. Eventually, BME evolved into a full-on subculture. It added a video archive, then launched its own blog meets social network called I Am BME Zine, where users casually documented healing scars, botched attempts, and in some cases, even self-castrations. There were even meetups, and by that I mean actual real-world gatherings like BME Fest, where people grilled burgers, dangled from meat hooks, and popped fireworks. Some people came to get their tongue split for the first time, and others brought their kids. While they thought it was a lot of fun, the rest of the world wasn't on board. Germany restricted access to the site, calling it dangerous for youth. Google blacklisted it. Office firewalls flagged it for torture and nudity. And governments asked Shannon to censor the content, but he just shrugged and moved the servers offshore. Shannon Larrett died in 2013, but his legacy lives on as part digital archive and part urban legend, scattered across corners of the internet that still haven't been scrubbed. That made your skin crawl? This is a warning that there's a site coming that was so disturbing, it came with actual health warnings for people with epilepsy. Before we get there, let's talk about the site that fooled people into thinking kittens could be grown in jars. BONSAI Kitten. The BONSAI Kitten website was like something out of a twisted science experiment. It claimed to teach people how to grow a kitten inside a glass jar. The idea, according to the site, was that by placing a young kitten in a jar and sealing it, its bones would slowly mold to the shape of the container as it grew. Just like a bonsai tree is shaped by years of pruning and wire. The page used clinical-sounding instructions and fake scientific jargon, paired with images of kittens appearing to be trapped in glass containers, which gave the impression that this horrifying practice was not only real, but also effective. As you can imagine, the site wasn't a real guy. It was made by an MIT student as a kind of dark satire, meant to highlight how humans treat nature as something to manipulate for aesthetics or amusement. But the problem was that nobody was laughing. They didn't even know it was a joke to begin with. People who stumbled across it didn't always understand the satire, and were disturbed by the idea that anyone would torture animals this way. The photos, while staged, were convincing enough that the outrage spread quickly. Animal rights organizations like the Humane Society and the Animal Welfare Institute received thousands of complaints. Some people demanded the creator to be arrested, while others started online petitions, believing this was a real form of abuse happening in someone's basement. The FBI investigated the website under a federal law signed in 1999 that criminalized the distribution of depictions of animal cruelty for commercial gain. Though the authorities eventually confirmed it was a hoax and that no kittens were harmed, the backlash didn't go away. The website was pulled from its original MIT server, only to reappear on other domains like Rotten.com. Even after official statements confirmed that the entire thing was fake, mirror versions of the site kept showing up, and so did the complaints, often from people in other countries where the story continued to circulate without context. Ted the Caver. When you first get in, Ted the Caver looks like nothing special. Just an old Angel Fire site with a black background and old HTML, and a few grainy photos. But once you start reading, it pulls you in. Written like a personal blog, the story follows a guy named Ted and his friend, B, as they explore a mysterious passage inside a cave system. It starts out normal enough. Dust, rocks, claustrophobic tunnels, just two guys slowly chiseling their way through a tight opening they've nicknamed Floyd's Tomb. But as they dig deeper, the tone shifts. The air pressure changes for no reason. They hear wind blowing through completely sealed tunnels. Strange symbols appear carved into the walls, and just like that, the cave stops being a cave. Ted documents everything, like a diary, using a plain, logical, and matter-of-fact writing style. And somehow, that just makes the descent into the weird even more disturbing. He talks about hearing voices, experiencing sleep paralysis, and having violent nightmares. He starts sensing something watching him, not just inside the cave, but back at home. But no matter how bad it gets, he keeps going back. With each update, the sense of dread builds. And because the blog was uploaded over time, it felt like it was unfolding in real life. By the final post, Ted mentions he's bringing a gun. He says they're going back in one last time because they have to know what's waiting. And then, nothing. There's no goodbye post and no report about what happened next. The blog just stops. For years, people thought it was real. The photos were too specific, too dirty, and cramped to be faked easily. Some caving enthusiasts even pinpointed which cave they thought it was based on Ted's descriptions and tried to find it themselves. Turns out it was fiction all along. It was written by a guy named Ted Hegeman, based on real caving trips, but with a lot of creative freedom. By the time it was confirmed, it didn't matter. The internet had already decided that Ted the Caver was a legend. This was fake, thankfully. But what people saw when they visited GOATSE.CX, yeah, that was real alright. We'll get to that soon. In the meantime, let's talk about a British magazine website that doesn't seem like much until you go down the rabbit hole. FORTEAN Times. FORTEAN Times isn't a gore site. It's not even trying to scare you. Or at least not in the way you'd expect. It's a British magazine that reports the world's strangest phenomena. Like it's reading out the weather. You open it expecting quirky stories about Bigfoot, or maybe a haunted toaster. And at first, that's exactly what you get. UFO sightings, ghost encounters, the occasional Victorian sea monster. But then it doesn't stop. Soon, you're reading about spontaneous human combustion. By that, I mean actual documented cases of people bursting into flames with no heat source and no warning. Just ashes where a person used to be. By now, your curiosity's awake, and the FORTEAN Times keeps feeding it with things like reports of animals raining down from the sky and invisible forces knocking people off their feet. No one's claiming it's aliens or demons or interdimensional glitches. They're just saying, here's what happened. Make of it what you will. And that's the creepy genius of it. FORTEAN Times doesn't try to explain anything. It collects weirdness like it's building a library. It cross-references sightings, revisits cases from decades ago, and makes the truly bizarre feel like just another news item. And that's when it starts to sink in. If even one of these stories is real, then what else might be? You start with a chuckle at a blurry photo of a lake monster, and before you know it, you're reading about entire flocks of birds dropping dead mid-flight, or people who vanish in front of witnesses. Tier 5. GOATSE.CX. If you were online in the early 2000s, chances are you got hit with something that scarred your eyeballs, and GOATSE.CX was the king of that ambush. The site greeted you with a minimal homepage, and before you knew what was happening, you would come face to face, or in this case, face to screen, with a very disturbing image of a naked man, crouched forward, using both hands to hold open the one place the sun don't shine. That image, infamously titled hello.jpg, was a raw display of something no one ever asked to see. And yet, it became one of the internet's most legendary traps. The photo itself surfaced in the late 90s and was passed around on corn-heavy Usenet forums. But it wasn't until a group of prank-loving hackers called the Hick Crew got involved that GOATSE became a phenomenon. They thought it'd be hilarious to drop the image into Christian chat rooms. Later, one of them registered the domain GOATSE.CX to streamline the chaos, and the rest, they say, is gross internet history. GOATSE was weaponized for shock value. People would mask the link with innocent bait like free iPods or puppy pics, then sit back and enjoy the scream. Soon, the image leaked into places that it had no business being. It got spammed into forums, shared on Oprah's message boards, snuck into BBC broadcasts, and even got used as revenge for hot-linking someone's images without credit. Entire sites were defaced with it. When Slashdot had to change its entire comment system just to stop people from sneaking in on GOATSE links, you knew this thing had become internet folklore. The original domain was taken down in 2004 for violating domain policies, but that didn't stop anything. Mirrors popped up everywhere. Try as they might, the people of the internet just couldn't rid themselves of that very haunting image. MEATSPIN. When you visit this site, the first thing you notice is the loud, upbeat music that some people say is annoyingly catchy. It plays on a loop like you just walked into a bad 80s dance party. Then your eyes slowly catch up to what's on screen. A low-res, looping clip of two people right in the middle of a very personal activity, while the receiving partner's family jewels spin in perfect circles right in time with the beat. And that's why it was called MEATSPIN. Launched in 2005, MEATSPIN wasn't just a video. It was a trap. A digital prank from the Wild West days of the internet. back when shock sites were practically a rite of passage, and drama was measured in seconds watched. In the corner of the screen was a spin counter that somehow dared you to keep going. 10 spins? Amateur. 50? You're getting somewhere. 100? You're never sleeping again. The footage was long believed to come from gay corn, but it was later traced back to a transgender adult film. Not that the internet cared. The point wasn't what it was what it did. MEATSPIN links were used exactly the same way people use GOATSE.CX links. They were weaponized for maximum embarrassment. People disguised it as job applications, funny memes, or news articles. Others snuck it onto public computers, college lecture screens, or worse, changed it to autoplay as someone's browser homepage. You didn't visit MEATSPIN willingly. You got meatspun. It didn't take long for the site's chaos to bleed into the real world. In 2013, a student at Florida State hacked campus Wi-Fi, so everyone got redirected to the spinning horror. 2 years later, the video played in a family restaurant. Yes, in front of children. And in 2016, someone hijacked a digital billboard in Sweden. MEATSPIN lit up the sky while drivers gawked and pedestrians questioned all their life choices. Long story short, never click a mystery link, because you might end up seeing some spinning. StaggeringBeauty.com. Staggering Beauty starts off harmless. When you first land on the site, it's just a white screen with a strange worm-like figure standing in the middle. It has big, white cartoon eyes and a soft, rounded body that sways with every move of your mouse. It feels silly, maybe even cute, like something pulled from an old-school game. You move your mouse a little and it dances. You move it faster and it starts flailing around like it's trying to keep up. But then something changes. Text appears that says, "Shake vigorously." And once you do, everything spirals out of control. The screen explodes into a mess of strobing lights, loud chaotic music, and colors that blast your eyes in every direction. There's no transition or build-up. It all just happens in a flash. 1 second you're laughing at the dancing worm, the next you're trapped in what feels like a psychedelic nightmare. The music is distorted and aggressive. The shapes come fast and the colors are blinding. There's no way to stop it except by closing the tab or clicking away as fast as you can. Even then, your vision might still feel warped for a few seconds. If you're light sensitive or prone to seizures, the experience can be physically dangerous. The site even gives a warning at the bottom for people who are prone to epilepsy. But it's small and easy to ignore. And the moment you follow the simple instruction to shake the mouse, it punishes your curiosity with sensory overload. For this one, there's no deeper message or hidden meaning. It was created in 2012 by a developer named George Michael Brower, who just wanted to play with JavaScript and animation tools like Paper.js and Trayer.js. STORMFRONT. STORMFRONT is what happens when old-school racism gets a makeover and finds Wi-Fi. Launched in 1996 by Don Black, a former Ku Klux Klan leader who apparently decided burning crosses just wasn't doing it for him anymore. It was the internet's first major organized hate forum, and it didn't just survive the early web chaos, it thrived. The site was sleek by 90s standards, structured like a real forum, and almost professional in its mission, which was to unite white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and Holocaust deniers under one digital roof. And it didn't hide what it was. The messaging was loud and clear. Whiteness must be protected. Diversity is a threat. And racism is just racial realism. It branded itself as a place for pride and heritage. But really, it was a recruiting ground. A place to turn passive bigots into full-on extremists through threads about race science, homeschooling your white children, and where to find a nice racist date. STORMFRONT had rules. No illegal stuff. No slurs in headlines. That type of stuff. But it was all BS. The real purpose was subtler and more dangerous. To radicalize slowly. Users weren't screamed at. They were groomed with pseudo-intellectual debates and fake historical facts until hate felt like common sense. And the damage wasn't limited to online nonsense. A disturbing number of its members went on to commit real-world acts of terror. Anders Breivik, who murdered 77 people in Norway, STORMFRONT user. Richard Poplowski, who shot 3 cops in Pittsburgh, also a user. The site wasn't just hosting racists, it was cultivating killers. In 2017, STORMFRONT got knocked offline for a bit. Not because they had changed their minds, but because web services finally felt enough public pressure to pull the plug. But of course, it didn't last. The site resurfaced, began jumping between servers, and tweaking its language just enough to avoid another takedown. Thisman.org. The face on thisman.org is a grainy and plain sketch, like something pulled from an old police report. It's a man with a wide forehead, thick eyebrows, and small eyes that just seem a little too close together. He's not monstrous or grotesque, just uncanny. But once you've seen him, it's hard to forget the way his expression seems frozen somewhere between a smirk and a grimace. And that's when the site tells you that this man has appeared in the dreams of thousands of people all over the world, none of whom know who he is. The website claims it started in 2006, when a patient described a man she kept seeing in her dreams. Her psychiatrist sketched the face, and another patient recognized him. From there, more and more people reported dreaming about the same man, often under strange or threatening circumstances. Some say he gives advice. Others say he just stands there, watching. A few say he hurts them. The creators say over 2,000 people have submitted sightings of this face in their sleep, across different countries, cultures, and languages. But the truth behind the site is even stranger. It's not entirely real. The man, the dream reports, even the worldwide phenomenon, was created as part of a viral marketing experiment by Italian sociologist Andrea Natella. He's the founder of Guerrilla Marketing, a group known for mixing art with psychological pranks. And according to multiple investigations, the whole site is a manufactured myth. There's no database of real dreamers, no psychiatrist, and no original sketch from a real patient. But somehow, knowing it's fake only makes it more disturbing. Because despite being fiction, people started dreaming about him anyway. After the site spread, users on sites like Reddit and 4chan started claiming they'd seen him too. Some drew their own versions, and others insisted they'd seen him before the site even existed. That's all we have for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and try not to crash your computer by checking the sites we just talked about. Don't say I didn't warn you.